So AL looking to try and cement themselves with their first W of the year in terms of series, but RA really want to be making this a 2-1, really want to be getting themselves up into that upper echelon of the playoff standing, especially this early on in the split.
Level 1 stack from AL towards this top side as we hear the gyros ring out across the arena. Silas was actually linked up with their bot lane. Strive, Southwind, Asim getting towards that bot side jungle. So vision put down on one side of the map, even if that's not matched towards the top side. And very interesting level 1s, actually. You don't often see that kind of the weirdly like half stack, the 3 on one side, 2 on the other. Normally you see either a 5-man fan across the entire map, or of course everyone stacked up in one place. But what this does mean is you're going to have Raptors watered out, you're going to have bot side jungle watered out as well on the side of anyone's Legend. And when you have early game junglers like the Lee Sin, like the Vi that can get into lanes, very important to see where that jungler is headed, see if you can't counter them at all.
Shall wait to see how it all goes. Betty gonna say, all right, Asim, not really a lot for you to do here, my friend. And this is the power of the Ashe support. Even just her passive, the slows. And that's RA's bot lane already losing priority. And when you pick a Varus Karma, not a great start.
That is actually really interesting from AL. Because the Mantra Q from Karma misses level 1, that is a huge amount of damage missing. You also know that if you start W on Sivir, you can get 2 stacks of lethal tempo very, very quickly. Betty and Sword Art do a quick calculation, say, hey, let's start W on the Sivir instead of something like a Q if we want to fight range versus range. We can win this early trade. Both summons taken away from Asim with quick thinking from anyone's Legends bot lane. The old Flash Wolves, Betty and Sword Art, getting something out of this laning phase.
You say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but...
What about a wolf?
I was going to say, got some wolves in that bot lane. We always like to talk about the old Flash Wolves duo. And again, KingZ going to have priority in this mid lane with this Rise. You just have that with the spell flux and such. But now Xiaohao teeters his way around that corner. Doesn't get spotted until very much now. Q over the wall by Leyen, followed by Xiaohao, but it only lands onto the Krug, so not going to be able to kind of follow up on that particular one. But
they tried it last game. Can they do it this time?
Oh, they're going to go for it. I think at least try and get rid of his flash, but they're going to get him away from the CS instead. So Xiaohao again being aggressive, and I love to see this because it's these little mini metas that we kind of develop when we're on a patch for so long, where it's like, okay, you're going for Maokai's, you're going for Sejuani's or anything like that. We're going to be able to take these away from you because we can go for an early skirmisher. We can go for something that can fight you early on in the jungle, and we are seeing a benefit from it, I really think, from the side of AL.
Yeah, and because of that level 1 trade from Betty and Sword Art, you can see that bot side control has gone over to anyone's Legend. Mid lane already expected that to be pushing in. Stride being denied some minions from under that tower. Xiaohao taking away at least the 1 camp from the enemy jungle. AL getting a decent amount of control in it. Yes, he was left alone towards this top side, but the reason that he has to be left alone towards that top side is because Leanne has to be on call for this bot side once again. Even in this draft, you would have expected it to be a bit more dominant from Grafton towards their bot side of the map, but that hasn't happened. And that means AL have much more of a foothold in this game than potentially we would have expected.
AL just prioritizing this bot lane as much as they possibly can. I like the Ashe priority they put Sword Art on. He has plenty of games on the champion. Betty, though, with flashing times available, is very much by himself. Leyen would be able to flash Q into him, so it should just be spell shields. And Betty is as cool as you like. Ice in his veins, doesn't lose a single summoner, and keeps himself relatively safe.
AL doing an awful lot better in this early game than we saw in, of course, that game 1. RA returned back to comfort for game 3, but they're not finding the same advantages that they did in their own victory. Looking towards this top side matchup, of course, Cube MVP of game 1. Talked about him being very important to this team, being a good litmus test for how well the team is doing. But despite having a CS lead, haven't taken any place. Not like he's managed to impact any of the rest of the map this early on. Top lane has very much struggled to do so. Has hit his level 6 mark though, Dominus available. Maybe Leon can make a trip towards this top side, try and get this Renekton to a point where we can actually impact this lane, but Very difficult to against ZDZ, who has that teleport, comes back now, has the level 6. I wonder if the window of time to very much exploit that one is growing shorter.
So far, so good from AL. Pretty quiet, though, in terms of the first blood percentages, but with Dragon spawning, or have spawned, and Rift Herald 2 minutes away, you would imagine we start to see some early rotations coming out from both these sides. You will still only have a Sivir on the bot side, but I don't think the Sivir's the big one. I think the big one is, in fact, this Karma heal by Sword Art to try and get onto Asim, I guess, but doesn't feel that worth. I feel like that one was just a missed opportunity. You go off, you kind of go, cool, we're not going to get anything else from it, and we back away.
That is a brief window of time where Asim still has no flash. You have, of course, the move speed from the heal, maybe trying to get those autos tagged into the slow, but calculation's wrong. Don't really manage to get on top of it. Now you're without that summoner for a potential dragon fight. Betty put out one side, Leanne looking in. I wonder what's going to come of this. Silas coming down to the play, though, makes things a little more awkward.
Again, very difficult to make something stick here for the side of AL. RA doing very well comparatively to game number 1 and 2 to stop this early dragon stacking. Leanne need to be a bit more careful, though. He will take a fair bit of damage.
Gotta remember stolen Ashol, Strive.
Here we go. Flash is going to land the CC as he's trying to use the realm up to get himself out. He will not survive, and that's going to be 2 kills going over to RA. AL thought they had the distance, but the good flash from Southwind secured the kill.
Kingsley just poured out a little too much on the side, can't join the rest of his team, and really punished for trying to join that fight in the worst kind of angle. And now suddenly, you're looking at what was a decent early game through Xiaohao holding back the mid jungle of Rerata. Bot lane doing its own job. Cube, though.
Keep going with this top side. Cube trying to see if he can take down ZDZ. It's a very close fight. The Renekton gets the solo bolo. And Cube will come out on top. This is what we just didn't see in game number 1. I don't know why ZDZ has decided to take that 1v1 now.
Yeah.
He knew how this matchup went in game number 2.
My favorite part of that is when Cube said, "It's Cube in time," and then cubed all over him. You slice and dice him into multiple chunks, and that one, I guess, level 6 all in, just not quite there on that calculation. Wasn't quite calculated enough here from Pingsy as well. Seen him be a little bit disconnected from the rest of the team multiple times in this series. Even in that last game, there was that awkward dive under mid lane turret where he thought they were going, wasn't actually going to be the case. And back to this 1v1 on the top side. I get that all does a lot of damage. Not enough to finish this one off, though. Doesn't quite manage to get the kill before Dominus spots. And Cube, credit to him for knowing his damages.
You know what the craziest thing is? It's a little bit of a non-secular, but I genuinely thought he said it's Morbin time in that movie. Because the internet convinced me that was actually said. Because I don't really care for Marvel movies or anything like that.
the entire premise of that joke was literally, I can't believe that he said this, and you can't prove me wrong because no one has watched this movie. That was the entire premise of all of those lines. And now it's come full circle in terms of like, wait, hang on, that's not a line in the movie? It's just, how ridiculous can you make this before things go crazy? I love that. The Strive taxi service bringing Southwind back to bot lane. That's great. I like that.
Yeah, it's very nice. You know, be nice to your supports. They do a lot. They ward a lot. But yeah, I like how it also forced the publishers to think they could re-release that movie into cinemas because they thought it would be a massive success. But neither here nor there. And you know who might not here or there in the next moment might be this mid lane as both junglers. Oh, that was clean from Xiaohao. He completely takes assessment of the situation and just perfectly executes.
MVP of game 2 wants his first series win. Xiaohao on the lead in. Been a real revelation for his team in this series so far, and even though Strive and Liam did a really good job around that bot side fight and making things start off in the favor of Reratum, cannot achieve the same in that mid jungle 2v2. Going back to the replay, where are we going to start? We're going to start right back in this mid lane. So, this is the way goes forward with the Absconder Duct. If you have the Lee Sin ult to steal yourself in this fight, maybe this gets a little bit closer. Xiaohao kicks, uses the kick flash to make sure that he doesn't stay under tower. That would have been the real danger point. Xiaohao commits the flash, but gets a good reward for it.
And this is what I love about junglers, man. It's mad how we've adapted as players and such. It's kind of like, you know, the longer a game is played in any sense of a traditional or video, you just have to get better because there's more available to you. There's more, you know, footage to kind of say things. Remember when the least people learn, but you remember the Lee Sin insect kick was like the greatest thing of all time?
Yeah,
and now it is
yeah.
standard. It is standard for a Lee Sin, any jungler who plays Lee Sin, to not only play Lee Sin, but to play it to that level. That's how insane that is.
Yeah. Time ticks forward, mechanics creep higher. CDC using the ult wave to clear the wave. Leon is on top side, maybe could have made an angle towards that. Maybe it is actually still an angle to go towards this top side because CDC still does not have his flash, but Leon instead going to find himself his own advantage. Let's take away those Raptors. And, we're looking for the next big play. Herald in the inventory of Leon. Have to see where that one is placed. Wondering if it's probably worth going towards Asim in this game. A lot of the time getting gold on towards your AD carry is a big factor, particularly when you're against the frontline tank as well. Someone like this Ornn. AD carries are typically the best placed character to take them down. Extra gold into someone like a Varus could very much help towards that end. But AL, they're looking to group towards this mid lane. Dragon up in a minute, looking to push in through mid, then head back down towards that bottom river. Two different objectives to look towards. You've got the Herald ready to be dropped and that Dragon ready to be taken. Those are what we're looking for and how they're used in the next minute or two.
Both junglers in the spot side of the jungle. 30 seconds till the dragon spawns. RA got the first. AL would definitely love to get themselves the second. Good vision control for the moment for RA as they've got themselves slightly behind enemy lines. Betty needs to be very aware. I imagine that there is a jungler here, and yes, he had a sixth sense. He had an inkling that someone was lurking in the shadows. He's just going to be able to try and move himself up now and continue to wave clear as best he can. Shelly will get the drop into the bot lane and should just about get her head bopped off, but the dragon now live on the table.
No gold to the Varus, which is a little annoying, but it does go to Leon. Dragon started up, because that is going to be taken. AL, I think they just realized, right, don't really want to walk into something like Strive to teleport towards that bot side. You understand that not really at the point in power yet where you have like 2 to 3 items Sivir who can maybe run through these fights. Not worth walking into a stolen Ash ult, throwing around that dragon. Of course, they already lost around that first one of the game a little earlier. Ocean Rift, 2 dragons to the side of Raratzen. Ocean Soul would be a lovely prize in this game. So, watch out for that soul point as it comes in later. Raratzen managed to recover a little bit from, of course, that disastrous game scene. I love when Silas is like, well, I'm gonna do something with this. We're gonna run out soon. He just fires it off to the corner of the map. I love that.
It's a nice little thing to have, but yeah, I'm not quite sure he needed to leave that early. It felt like he could maybe have stopped a little bit of a push here, but was very aware that the mid lane was pushing against them. As AL did get themselves back onto the map. Plate goes over to the bot lane of AL, and there's only about 1,000 gold lead in it. So really, only the real advantage coming out for RA is that dragon stacking they have improved for themselves, but we are starting to see first item completions. You do have the Gore Drinker for Xiaohao and the Rod of Ages stacking up here for Ping Z. You've got the Kraken Slayer finished up for Betty. These are little things, but this is the start of the end, or the beginning of the end, shall we say, for the side of RA if they do not start to find some more bigger, more tangible advantages in this game.
Yeah, we can see that Leanne went towards the Chainsword first, and Cube went towards the Gore Drinker. What that means is actually you don't have a Black Cleaver for your triple AD damage threat. So, look, Vi actually does have some damage. It's worth having a Black Cleaver for their damage too. So I wonder if actually one of Renekton or Vi should have picked that one up first to try and make the most of these first fights. I get that both of those items go into the Chainsword, very good stat sticks in their own right, but could be useful for one of those champions to pick up a Black Cleaver sooner rather than later to aid each other in doing damage to particularly this Ornn, who is emoting under tower because he knows he's doing fine. For a player which has struggled in individual top matchups through both this series and across this year so far as well, that's going to be a problem. Bot lane.
Oh, a nice flash kick does keep Asim away from any kind of relative safety. He's not going to use any of his summoners because he knows that he is dead, right? But in 3 on bot side means that there's 3 free in the mid where Adam gets himself a kill. He may be able to put pressure now onto this Rift Herald because everyone from AL went bot.
Yeah, well, they did commit Leon's flash ult for this. That's a stolen ult.
It is a stolen ultimate, and he's going to find himself in a lot of trouble. Flashes away. This is the power of the Rod of Ages. You have so much HP, just stacking and stacking and stacking. I will say he does have the Merc Treads as well, so that does keep him relatively safe in most senses. But good to see the Summoners being burned here for our AAL. Still need to find themselves a way back in terms of the objective game, because they are slowly falling behind in that regard. Now Strive trying to deal with this Betty 3 pushing in the bot side.
Yeah, maybe a bit worried about someone coming around the corner though. RA don't have the best bot side vision. They got a little bit. They got one in that that lane rush, but Strive has to let that one go. Replay. So I guess we're going to see what happened around this. I mean, he just gets caught out of it. Doesn't take the trip down with the rest of his team. Fires the ult, says, right, I'm done with that. Doesn't get in the taxi. Is left alone. Whereas he sneaked that one up. So help with that mid lane. Aston might actually get some gold from this one. He didn't get any from the first one. Mid lane tower goes down. That's important. It's actually very important. But Cube, 1v2. Let's see what we do top side.
Oh, he flashed before the Orn Horn was sounded. He is going to sustain quite a bit with that Gore Drinker. He needs to be so careful to try and not make sure that does not happen again. Shutdown goes over to the Rise, and AL, they're coming into their own right now. They're kind of picking up the gears. You've a Sivir, a Rise, and Orn. You have extensive late game scaling that is going to start to come to fruition in the next 5-6 minutes.
Yeah, and you're not in a position to 1v2 in that situation. Cube, bit of an awkward flash. Maybe gets out with his life if he doesn't get hit by the Ornn, but of course it's such close range. Difficult to do so. PingZ though, able to pick up a side lane turret, deny a lot of farm in this top lane. At least I think he will be able to on that top side. Probably close to it. And anyone's legend. Actually throwing back some punches. Able to get something out of this early game as it's just starting to end. Got past the second herald now, getting into the mid-game side of things, and that's how Will finally fall on that top side. This Rise, PingZ, the late replacement for Harder in 2023, came in after a couple of series of Harder playing. Doing very well in this game and potentially looking to seal AL their first series win in this do-or-die match in this series, Game 3.
Well, Soul Point going over to RA. No one on the side of AL willing to contest it just yet. They're saying, look, we wait 5 more minutes. PingZ will have full stacks in his Rod of Ages. He'll have his Seraphs. He'll probably have a full first item or full mythic item onto ZDZ. Maybe an item and a half more for Betty. That's kind of the game plan right now for AL. They're looking for one big fight, I would imagine, around this Dragon Soul. And the thing is, if they're able to secure that 4th dragon of the game, that delays the game even further. It just plays into their pocket. So RA, yes, fantastic for them to pick up those first 3 dragons. They need this soul if they want to try and keep in tow with what I imagine AL is looking to do.
Yeah, if they get that soul, particularly the Renekton gets really insufferable. Even something like you can see that Strive is building towards the Zhonya's. So, in case you don't know, Ocean Soul keeps ticking up and healing you while you are in stasis to the Zhonya's, which is very important for a champion like Silas. He goes in, heals a bit with the W, uses the breadth of the HP bar, which is, of course, extended by the Rod of Ages. If you have an Ocean Soul ticking while you're in stasis, it just makes it that harder to kill you. But you got to get to that point first, and it's 4 minutes away. Getting to second items now. Sivir, Betty Sivir becoming much more of a threat, and the Ornn reached level 13, getting to the point where you're going to get even more gold value out of the ornaments coming through sooner rather than later.
Look at top lane turret, but already Machine Gun Rise is starting to do Rise wave clear things. Zhonya's Hourglass not far off for Strife, but hasn't quite been able to finish off that item. We will see the Rod of Ages and Seraph stack coming in here for PingZ. Now there's just a little bit of a lull as we see all teams just trying to corral themselves around this dragon, or excuse me, the Baron Pit up by the red buff. But red buff was secured by the smite by Xiao Hao. And again, nothing really too untoward to be talking about. So looking at the way these team fights are going to be setting themselves up, how do you want to see RA fate themselves up? They obviously have a bit of an advantage. They've got a little bit of a gold lead. They have 3 minutes until that soul. How do you want to see them approach that particular objective?
Depends on which ult Strive chooses or can get a hold of before the fight builds up. If you have an Ashe Arrow, you're looking for the first target, look to see if you can catch out someone on the flank. I think a lot of it for RA works from pushing in a side lane, getting a flank, and allowing either Silas or Renekton to get into the backline. If they're stood with their group, the rest of the team, it needs to be very hard to get through Lee Sin kick, the Ornn. And that's going to be the real tale of it. Can you get past those 2 beefy frontliners and onto the carries of the Rise, onto the Sivir as well, because those champions will absolutely run amok. Strive just turning around the corner. Ornn ult or Ashe ult with a real big flavor of this match for him. See which one he really wants to go towards. The big team fight engage or the single target. Going towards the single target, that's the Ash ult.
Oh, nicely absorbed there by Betty. Really heads up play there, recognizing he is probably the only one who can take the hit and then survive the aftermath. So nothing to be done there. Good hawk shot to spot out absolutely everybody else waiting in the bush as we return. Clean's going to be hit by Assum, who does get out the chain of corruption. Bit of harassment as well. It's all poking and prodding, pushing and pulling. No one fully committing right now, but plenty being burned by both sides.
This is because they can't find RA, haven't found a flank. They haven't found the multiple angle, but they found Betty.
They found Betty, but he had the spell shield back. Leanne waited too long, and now AL can return the favor. It's all on Cube. He gets the Gore Drinker proc, so he's very, very powerful, but a double kill over to the Rise. Ping Z on this Rise is just too much to handle, and AL come out on top 2 for 1.
Huge mechanical misplay by Liad. He tries to smite away the spell shield before the ult lands, but he doesn't get it. He loses that mind game with Betty. Betty gets the spell shield and lives. We talked about how it is all about getting onto the Civic, getting onto the Rise for Rare Atom. They don't manage it in that fight. They don't find the flank. They misuse that Silas ultimate. And AL, they look at RA, they stare them down and they say, blink first. They do. Look at how this works. Watch when this smite comes through. He times it late. The ult animation has already gone through by Liam before he smites. The smite then ends up going through, but the ultimate doesn't. It means that there's no CC onto that Sivir, and AL, they get to run things back with that Sivir ult running.
Big gold now going over to the Rise, who, as you can see, the Rise and Sivir are starting to stack up, starting to do damage. 40 seconds though until that soul point. You've no flashes on really any of your carries here on the side of RA, where the only one you lost on the side of AL was Ping Z, and so he used it aggressively to try and catch out Assum. No cleanse either on Assum, so if he gets caught out by an Ash Arrow, he's effectively dead at this point in the game, so have to be so wary of his positioning. As we can see now, AL starting to feel confident. Ash Arrow does miss. They're going to use the Realm Warp to try and get on top of Cube, who has the dominance to pop up, try and keep himself alive with the Gore Drinker, the kickback. He's still going strong. He's still keeping himself alive. Just about falls down. Xiao Hao needs to keep himself alive before anything else happens in this game. Strive, very, very healthy, still able to push back multiple people as Ping Z now in a lot of trouble, trying to use that phase rush to the best of his ability. He goes golden. Xiao Hao gets caught out, and they're going to be able to take out the Ashe, the Rise, and the Lee Sin. They get everybody and everything. RA are able to make it work because AL got separated.
They get separated, and Betty flashes over a wall to kill Cube. As soon as that flash is gone, as soon as Sivir is out of range to do DPS, AL are not the same team composition. The Sivir is so core to everything that they're doing. Swing and a miss from the Ashe ult. Almost a swing and a miss from this Rise ult too, honestly. You're going into melee range of Cube on that Renekton. And despite taking so much damage, does an awful lot of AoE. That's like half the HP bars from mid and jungle from AL right at the start of that fight. Assum not under any threat. Sword Art out of the play. Betty out of the play. Strive more than happy to run them down. And AL very aggressive on the engage. They've given up the Soul. They've given up the Baron. RA, despite that difficult game 2, despite some difficulties in this early game of game 3, are looking to take absolute control of the series.
Yep, they get themselves a soul. They now have the Baron, and I really gotta call out Xiao Hao on that last play. The Lee Sin Dragon's Rage kick wasn't it. He tried to use it as an execute onto Cube. Cube got the Gore Drinker off, which means he doesn't go low enough. He ends up getting further and further away, and they have to commit more and more to kill him off. It really did feel like you need to be keeping that ultimate not as a killer, but as an initiator, as something to try and get either people in or away from your team. So little bit of a misplay there from Xiao Hao as the Baron is now secured to the side. Lian, that's the kind of kick that we need to be seeing. And Lian, kind of living up to his name in Twitch chat, which we shall not name.
That was an awful lot for a red buff. You have used the Ashe ult, you have used the Sivir ult and the Ornn ult now though, so Rare Atom, maybe a stolen Ashe ult or the like could make things a little spicy for them, but after such a hard-earned advantage, especially getting that Baron buff, that is a bit of a misuse of it. You now suddenly don't get to group up in the same way to use the most of that buff, and Ping Z happy to side lane at this point too.
Happy to go for the side wave, nearly level 16, as is Strive. Cube probably not far off it as well. ZDG starting to put in those ornaments right now. So we get to have that really fun game, a little mini game that I like to have, which is
do you know the Kraken Slayer one?
I do not know the Kraken Slayer one.
The
I know
Wormfallen
the
Sacrifice. I know that one. Wormfallen Sacrifice.
The Eclipse one is like
Syzygy
or something. Yeah,
Syzygy, yeah. You see,
no, Ziggy.
yeah.
I prefer that one. That's my preferred.
You know what? I'm not opposed to people having fun. You have all the fun you want with that name. That's completely okay.
Well, you know, we'll see.
Do you know what a Syzygy is? It's a special kind of eclipse. It is a special kind of eclipse. I think it's like when the moon is the other. It's like, I'm trying to remember, it's when like you have the moon, the earth, and then the sun in alliance, like they're in the opposite way. There's something like that. There's a weird thing with it. It's a specific orientation of an eclipse. But AL might get eclipsed in this one. That Rizal, not going to be pulled in any sense. I don't know why he pulled it for Rizal. Marisol pulled in return. They're stolen on ult.
Stolen on orb. Betty actually used his spell shield there to no real avail. They are trying to just defend this tier 2. This will be the first of the tier 2s to really go down, you would imagine. And despite all the huffing and puffing from RA, it's not gone down just yet. They still do have Charles the Cannon minion to try and put in some decent work. Leanne goes straight in onto the backside, immediately has to flash away because he recognizes that he's not that tanky. So if he gets caught out, he will just die. Flash was burnt though by Ping Z. And you can see, despite the Baron buff, it's a difficult slog through the trenches to try and get these towers, to try and get this damage down. The Ash Arrow was stolen and used, but it wasn't going to lead to anything else. So we come back into this game and only one tower taken for all that time, all that resources. It's not that great of a trade, in my opinion, for RA.
Well, a lot of that comes from Leanne dying on that red buff for no particularly good reason. It's stalled out the game, which should have been the killer blow, but AL, credit to them, managing to pick off enemy jungle in that jungle on that red buff. Xiaohao poking his head around as well. This Lee Sin, decent early game impact to win both of the games that we've seen it. MVP for that game 2, of course, but really going to struggle now to get maximum value. You're probably looking at just kicking Renekton out of a fight, just kicking, at very best, someone like a Varus into the team, but that would be a very hard goal to do, and you've got to get through the Vi and the Renekton in front of him. AL though, they're still in it, especially as you were saying, the Baron buff not getting the maximum value. Very much CAL grouping up, trying to use their ultimates once again, try and get a cleaner initiation that they managed to in the last 5 or 6 minutes or so. Try and maybe flip around this Elder.
New item. Getting an ornament. The Jack Show. You know what that one is called? Because that's what this one's actually really cool. I actually really like it.
I don't know this one. What is Jack Show Protean evolved into?
Unspoken Parasite.
Oh,
it's kind of cool,
meaty,
right?
I
it's
like
kind of metal, right?
See, I'm a big fan of like Warhammer Fantasy and 40,000, both of them, and that is just the most grimdark name I can think of, which is a word which is typically
Parasite is so
that is
cool.
Just great. That sounds like a Tyranid horror. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it really does feel like ZDZ is going to be that unspoken parasite as he just kind of keeps everyone off of his team, and you're going to be kind of stacking up now with a lot of resistances. It's going to be very difficult to take him down later on in these fights. You're now at 3.5 items for your Sivir. You have 3.5 items for your Rise. You are a significant late game. You do have a Rabadon's Deathcap 4 Strife as he TPs back into the hinge. Xiaohao looking for a move, but they pinged him out because they have a ward on him. Needs to be careful. Oh, they're going to try and jump in now on top of this one here. They're getting a lot of damage on the South Wind and a lot of damage on the Leanne, who doesn't have a flash, remember, because he had to use it, but he got his job done. They killed the Silver. The Silver is dead, and they're going to have to see now Ping Z trying to get out with his ultimate, but it's not going to be enough. Strive and Leanne got their jobs done. They found the AD carry, and that could just be game.
Both these junglers looking for their respective enemy AD carries. Leanne finally finds the mark, punished for it earlier. Not going to be to do so at the death of this game, the death of this series. With both carries down for anyone's Legend, this could very well be the death push of the series.
Absolutely, another solo ultimate. You can see Strife just on this Silas just has so little basic cooldown at all, to be honest with you, with his ultimate. He's able to hijack everything. They are able to kill off most of the waves, so this might not be the game just yet. Xiaohao, one more auto attack would have killed him off. Assam not going to be taken down by the turret, neither will Strive. And TPs are coming in, but they're not quite done with this one just yet. That's going to be ZDZ jumping back in with the fight. He doesn't have his ultimate just yet. They know the Elder is live. They know the Baron is as well. They can't let these go.
Exactly, because that base push fails, Elder, Baron, both alive. You have to fight around this Elder. You cannot let this go on either side. Typically does mean the death of that game. While it might not have been at that Nexus push, ultimate's coming back up for AL in the next few seconds. Can they find an initiation?
Here we go. You've got a stolen Sivir ultimate. This is the thing that when you're rotating through all these ultimates, all the good ones are gone. All the great ones are no longer available to you. You've got to be very careful which one you're able to kind of go for. The Elder has been started. CDZ would love to use his Ornhorn if possible, but Pingzi's been caught. He goes golden. We're going to see the Ornhorn Southwind is dead. Assum is very much on his own, but he's taking people down with him. The Sivir and the Varus have been traded. The Ashe is dead. ZDZ trying to be a nuisance, trying to be that unspoken parasite, but it shall not be enough. Cube with the double, and RA looking like they're going to be able to take this series.
Oh, and Betty cannot stay alive against the Varus. Xiaohao, he doesn't have it all. He's just walking up towards this wave, seeing what he can do, and it's a whole lot of nothing. RA on the second attempt of visiting these Nexus towers will take them down and will keep themselves afloat in this series, go to a positive win rate of 3-2.
Positive win rate. Unfortunately for AL, they go to 0-6. We'll talk about that in a minute, but for the moment, RA 3-2, really nicely done for them as they keep their drive for playoffs alive.
It was a harder fought win than potentially we would have thought at the start of the day. I think you and I were both expecting potentially a 2-0 coming through from Miratim, given that AL has showed us sparingly little through their first 5 series. But in the 6th, they take a win. They actually find a decent set of early game results in that Game 3 as well. It's an improvement, but it is not an improvement to their series score. 0-6, right at the bottom of the table. Very difficult start for them. But Rare Adam, again, giving us some questions today towards the negative, but still showing that they are a competent team that may push towards those playoff spots later into the split.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good moment, I suppose, for RA and making sure that they're continuing that forward momentum. They had 2 wins in, 2 losses, now into a 1 win. And honestly, it does feel like that second game was just a little bit of a blip on the radar, but it is something to be keeping in the back of our minds. And it's definitely something that kind of causes a little bit of concern for me, especially when we're looking at the likes of OMG, IG, these teams that are roughly around the same kind of pedigree as you, where you might have an opportunity to be able to take them down. They will not hesitate to try and destroy you in those kind of games. They will not hesitate to absolutely decimate you if you give them half an opportunity. So for RA, great win, still a little bit to be worked on.
Particularly when you are looking towards their future opponents, though. You mentioned OMG. That's a team which I'm particularly worried about for RA, because OMG are one of the more creative drafting teams in the LPL. We know that Shanji plays a lot of weird stuff. We know that across the board. They have known to be they play some different champions. Abel Samira, one of those.
I like to have
if
fun.
you have a load of champions which you are specialized on for RA, and you say, look, we need this fight, we need these initiators. You have some depth in champion pool, but it's the same kind of draft every game, where it's like, look, solid 1v1 top lane champion in terms of the fighters, bruisers, initiator jungle, maybe a skirmish mid, and then just a very solid but non-interactive bot lane. It does make you worried for what a team with a run-up to this team could do in terms of that draft. What happens if you remove those initiators from the jungle? Didn't look great when Leon was on that Maokai. And yes, that ult is a form of initiation, but it's not really the first go button. There are some cracks in here shown in the armor, which I think other mid-table teams now across the LPL will be looking at with a bit of a glint in their eye.
Yeah, honestly, I completely agree. It does feel like we are now firmly kind of figuring out who this team is, what they're able to do, what they're capable of. 5 games in, effectively nearly a third of the way through the split, and this is the kind of setup that we're seeing now from these guys. So RA, still great that they're 3-2. We'll still need to see a little bit more from them, but for the other side of the AL, they showed a little bit there. I do think that, Ping Z was doing great, but you can see just when one of their strengths, to be perfectly honest, which is team fighting, just kind of fell apart from them, and it did feel like they were just being picked apart once they lost that momentum, once they lost the drive to kind of control the tempo of the game. They didn't really know how to bring that back, and it really felt like they were just kind of pressing buttons and looking to try and make something happen where something wasn't there.
And I think bringing it back to Pingsy as well, some decent individual plays, some decent realm warps, but in key moments, you could see that Pingsy was disconnected from Zhao Hao in the 2v2s, disconnected from the rest of the team when he was on the flank looking for something onto the backline, was often picked off around the side of the team fight. In fact, one of the last big fight around the Dragons was Pingsy getting caught as well. That's the kind of mistake which you can't afford to make against teams with a lot of initiation. And of course, RA love to draft towards that from the jungle and whatever, but those mistakes will come to haunt you, and that's something which they're going to have to work on, this mid laner connecting with the rest of his team.
Yeah, well, we're going to be sending it over to Christina, who's standing by with the Victorious Cube for an interview.
Hello there, welcome to Post-Game Interview. I'm Christina. We're joined by Cube, the top laner for Rare Adam. Congratulations on your victory. Let's get started game number 1. I do think that your Renekton did a really good job on top lane and especially in team fight. I'm curious about what was your team's communication be like when they saw you just 1v4 in Last Dragon team fight. 欢迎 Cube 选手来到我们赛后采访，恭喜今天 RA 获得了比赛的胜利。首先想问一下，在第一局的时候，我们可以看到 Cube 选手的鳄鱼不仅是在线上表现出色，并且在团战中也是一马当先。特别是想问一下，在最后一波龙团的时候，你的鳄鱼几乎可以说是1打4，然后赢下了比赛的胜利。那一波队内的沟通大概是什么样的？
那波的话就是感觉，就那时候我们已经死了一个人吧，好像，然后就感觉，当时感觉要输了嘛，然后就突然就感觉有点肉死不了，然后就赢了。
At that time, actually, our support was dead, but I do think we still have a chance. I'm so tanky, so I just have a try and really makes great job. And second question, I also want to touch on your general macros in Game 3, because anyone's legend played around Bali in Game 2, and they won Game 2. So what was your general macros in Game 3, and what was your main point? Is that because you really want to target it on Bali or any objectives? 那么说到今天的第3局比赛，想问一下 RA 这边的大致策略是放在什么关注点上？因为之前 AL 确实在第2局是围绕下路打开的局面，所以你们在第3局会想去限制他们的下路吗？还是在专注于你们的一些中立资源团战的获得呢？
第3把的话就换了个中野英雄吧，因为就我们第3把的中野是可以找机会的，但第2把的中野就是破克型的英雄嘛，找不了机会，所以就换了个找机会的，会好打一点。
Actually, we have changed our mid and the jungle comps in Game 3 because we think we picked the jungle and the mid laner was so weak in Game 2 and they just can make some poking damage. But in Game 3, we have this strong combo. They can find a lot of opportunities. And final question for you, every team is trying to find their appropriate play style in the beginning of the season. And what do you think of Rare Atom's team synergy overall, and is there any room for improvement from your perspective, like team communication or the other things? 最后一个问题，其实现在到春季赛还是处于一个前中期的阶段嘛，大家都在积极尝试适合自己的战术风格。你觉得对于 RA 整支队伍来说，你们现在的一个团队协作觉得怎么样？以及说，如果想要达到更好成绩的话，有哪些方面还是你们想要去提升进步的呢？
就我们的话就。感觉就一直都是那些缺点吧，就感觉失误会很多吧，就我们就需要玩得很严谨，就尽量少犯失误吧。
Actually, we made so many mistakes in previous games. We need to really play more discipline and make less errors in next coming matchups. Thank you so much for joining me. 谢谢 Cube 来到我们赛后采访，跟大家说再见吧。Bye bye. Back to you guys.
Thank you so much, Christina, and of course to Q. Congratulations.